been thinking about Joseph Campbell's model of the hero's journey, and I actually read up a little bit on it. The paper said that what a myth is a story that encapsulates an aspect of the human experience so deeply that it can outlive whole societies and whole generations and is eternally relevant and eternally resonates with the human psyche. No matter how our culture changes, it's something that still sits right with us. And these are things we know and recognize without having to be taught them, right? They are narratives that act as metaphors that kind of represent the capabilities of human potential and human life. They're a truth beyond words or images. They're a truth that isn't context specific to that world that we live in or that culture. They are true beyond all of that. And that's why they have to be put through a story, because they can't really be explained through words. They have to be acted out, right? Like a hero myth is. It's a story that can be applied to many different domains, right? And basically what an archetype is then, it's like a psychological representation of a mythological way of being. But that's a lot of like words, and I get that. So what do I mean? It's a way we can mentally represent ways of living life that have worked across time and are fundamentally good. And I think these are intrinsic, right? You don't learn them through experience. They're kind of in your mind. And that's why as a kid you love watching Disney films and shit like that, because Disney films they're like animated, colourful, musical manifestations of mythological stories. Now that sounds wild, but that's what they are. That's why you can be 4 years old and watch Beauty and the Beast and be absolutely gripped by it. Like, you don't have an idea of what's really going on, but there's something about the narrative that grips you. And so that might sound like a bunch of waffle, but what that led me to think is like, let me talk about the hero myth before I go into sort of applications to life. So going from that, then what the paper said was, Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero myth, he called the hero myth the monomyth, which basically means it's the overall story of human existence. There can be different kind of versions of it, but it's the overall amalgamation of all of those narratives. It is the mythological representation of what it means to be human. And it had a couple of key features, and that's the going into the unknown, facing challenge, and coming back with wisdom and having transformed. They're like the 3 key stages. And that's what being a human is. You're born into the unknown world. You're a baby. You have no idea what's going on around here. You have no idea what other people are or objects are or what you're supposed to be doing. And you travel into that unknown. You exist. You have to live. And through that, you take on challenges and navigate obstacles. And then you learn things and you grow and you transform and you become an individual. And that's how human life works. Now, that might have been slightly incoherent, probably because my knowledge on it isn't excellent. But I find it so fascinating, mate. I find it so fascinating because it literally gives us a framework of like, if you don't know what to do with your life, try and do this. You can apply that principle of call to adventure, enter the unknown, face challenges, accrue wisdom and transform. That can be applied to anything. Into sport, into relationships, into work, it's a narrative that you can live out. You can be that hero. And one final point I'll say before we go into interpretations and branch off is that courage, right? Courage is the elixir, the fuel that you need to live out this life, to venture into the unknown, to be the hero. You need courage. It's a fundamental character trait of all heroes throughout stories and movies and comic books and everything that we consume. The hero has courage. And so that's where I'll leave it.
How should we actually ask this one first? So if the aim that's built into us is to try and be a hero, is there any other archetypes that we should also try and be like? Is this the other archetypes going to be a state of being like, for example, the jester, the fool, the wise king? Are these other kind of modes of experiences that are also we should try and experience?
I think so. I think I think it's true. I think they are. So take the fool, for example. When you try something new, let's say on the hero's journey, right? This is why the hero's journey is like the amalgamation of all the symbolic narratives that make up like ways that you can exist in the world that are good and that are beneficial. To enter into the unknown, you have to be a fool. You have to sort of adopt that narrative that you are going to look like an idiot in order to transform later down the line. You have to start out when you try something new of being shit and then eventually improving. Or think about it, and some great archetypes come around, like parenting, right? We all kind of have a narrative in our mind of what the divine mother figure looks like, right? That's shown in so many artworks and films and old stories of the nurturing mother, or the divine father, right? These are characters. These are how do I put this? These are ways of being that we recognize without being taught them intellectually. Like, you can recognize what good nurturing parenting looks like, and that's because the person is acting out some kind of archetype, a nurturing mother or father archetype. And so, yeah, there are stories we're told that we should act out to live good lives, and that's what a myth is. That's why myths last across time, because they are relevant no matter what the context is.
And you said a myth is this timeless story. How should we integrate myths into our lives? Like all these kind of timeless stories of St. George and the Dragon. I don't know if I can think of any more on the top of my head, but
Harry Potter's the same thing. The story of Jesus Christ is the same thing. Even look at like Shrek. Shrek's the same thing. It's the same story. The call to adventure, the challenge, and then returning with new wisdom. Like, it's the same thing.
And rescuing the princess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to answer your question, something that was in the paper that really fascinated me was the difference between the myth and a story is that stories are just told. Myths are supposed to be experienced. They're supposed to be acted out. Right? I like that a lot. And so to answer your question of how we apply it to our lives, when we find a story really gripping, right, like when you watch Harry Potter, that you'll sit through 7 like 2.5 hour long films about a wizarding world that doesn't actually objectively exist. The reason you're gripped by that is in some way, I think, you're watching what your life could be. Right? You're not going to be able to cast spells through a wand and, take down Voldemort, but you're watching mythological ways of being represented to you. And so that resonates because that's something that you want to live out that life, right? And so what I would say is people should research the hero's journey. I think it's just a concept, because I think it's brilliant. And you can adopt the principles into your life. There will be a call to adventure at some point. I talked about this in the video I made, but it's very specific to your life. So it could be you move to university, to a new city you've never been before. You start a new job, or you try and pick up a new skill, or you meet a new person. These are all calls to adventure. And they're always placing a choice in front of you, whether you'd like to move forward into it or recede back out of fear and uncertainty. And there are always going to be challenges that you could take on that could push you. That could be the new project at work, or trying to develop a relationship with that person, or trying to get better at a skill and get to a certain level. These are all the challenges and trials and tribulations that come with that. And then returning with new wisdom and going through personal transformation happens as a consequence of pushing yourself into that unknown and taking on those challenges. And what I love about the concept is that it's a cycle. You return and feel comfortable, then you go back out into the unknown. It's like something we talked about at the beginning of this conversation about the every 18 months or 24 months, you should feel a level of imposter syndrome. You should go out into the unknown. The ship should venture forth from the harbour. It's true. There's something deep in us, I think, that craves that. And that's why the hero's journey story or narrative is so gripping, because it represents how you should live your life.
That is a really good definition. It's a mode that should be experienced. It's like in Robin Hood, we are supposed to do good and confront the corruption, and then through the kind of the taking from the rich, we then give back to the poor, i.e. help our families and things like that.
Yeah,
that should be experienced.
Yeah, and look, there are two perspectives on this. There are the cynical types that will go, what is bro yapping about? Bro has a degree in yapology, bro's just chatting shit, right? Just live your life, wake up, and don't think about it too much, right? But I think for some people, in the way their minds are wired, having a sophisticated lens to view your life is so useful. Like, you can wake up and confront the chaotic potential of the day and see your challenges as dragons to slay and become a more balanced, valuable, integrated human through doing that. And just as I'm talking about that as a way of life, I feel excited, I feel enthusiastic about my life. And that's one thing. I think this is why, on a general point, I'm so fascinated in psychology and philosophy and spirituality and religion, because as humans, we can decide how we view and experience our life. And if you want to create, the normal way of looking at it and say that what I'm saying is yap and just get on with it, like, that's fine. But I think there is a way we can look at our worlds where we are a hero. You can create a story. You can do it. And that's so beautiful, I think.